What's up, guys? Coach Nate here from the Running Experience. You know, Molly Seidel got bronze in the women's marathon event in Tokyo. Absolutely incredible. But how did she do it? What was her mindset last year dealing with COVID, with the delayed Olympics? How did she even get into the marathon event in the first place? Well, lucky you, we interviewed her last year, and that is playing next.
So, Molly, we are so excited to have you on the show tonight. So, thank you for coming. And just a little bit of background on Molly, you all. The first mile that she ever ran, she ran in 6 minutes flat. I think am I correct about that? Okay, yes. And then she went on to win 12 state titles in high school. And then how many NCAA titles in college?
4.
Okay, and then if you didn't know, most recently, Molly was second at the women's U.S. Olympic marathon trial. She was just 7 seconds behind first place to make the Olympic team in her first marathon. So, yes, welcome, Molly. We cannot wait to talk to you about a lot of stuff.
No, I'm so excited to be here. This is like really exciting.
Awesome.
Where are we here? So, you know, we really have to ask this just first question, and I'm sure you've been asked it a bunch, but like not many people who think about towing the first marathon, like even have the Olympics in the equation. Like, what was it like to tow your first marathon and then actually make an Olympic team?
So much of it was kind of managing the stress and the nerves at the start, just because it wasn't just a sense of like, oh, I'm running my first marathon at the Olympic trials, but I'm running it with like one of the most stacked fields we've ever had at the Olympic trials. Just every time I looked around and there was like another 5 women who have just all done the most incredible things. So it was like, it was trying to focus on my own race and trying to trust in my own fitness and going out without getting too wrapped up in the fact that I was like standing next to Desi Linden, who's like won the Boston Marathon, or Jordan Issei, who's run a 2:20 marathon. So it's like, yeah, just trying to focus on what I needed to do rather than to get too much like into just what that race meant. Also, I love your cat there.
That's his first appearance on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll see him a little bit more as we go along. Yeah, it's funny, I was trying to do the math, Molly, like Des Linden, I think she did her first trials, or she made her first trials in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you in 2012?
I was a senior in high school.
Yeah, that's got to be crazy thinking about, competing with like the people that you may have looked up to in high school, and now all of a sudden you're towing the line with them.
I mean, like, truthfully, like, these are the women that I had their posters on my walls. So it's like, yeah, that's part of it, is just not being like, oh my gosh, I'm standing next to Desi Linden. Oh my gosh, I'm standing next to Molly Huddle. And like, yeah, just being like, okay, I deserve to be here. Even though I don't necessarily have the accolades of these women, it's like I have earned my spot on this line just as much as they have.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, go,
well,
Ashley.
that's a totally interesting thing to bring up, because a lot of people have said, like Molly is like the underdog. She's come out of nowhere with this breakout performance. But in truth, like, we went through these incredible accomplishments that you've had already in your running career from like when you first started. So you also had a lot of success at the 5,000, the 10,000. And then you went, it almost seems like straight into this marathon. Like, why run that already?
I guess part of it is that I like the longer distances. This was a race that I knew I wanted to do, and it wasn't a matter of whether I'd do a marathon, but when. And I see so many people waiting until their 30s to do the marathon, and I just kept thinking, like, I feel like I'm ready to do it now. I'm doing high mileage. I'm doing these workouts, and I don't want to wait until the end of my running career to try this. Like, I feel like I could go out and be competitive now. But now it definitely is a matter of like, okay, trying to preserve my longevity in the sport, because the marathon is very difficult on your body. So, I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can run a marathon, I can be competitive in it. And now it's like, okay, how do we maintain this over months, over years? Yeah, but it was really funny leading into that. I think, especially with a lot of the media surrounding that trials with it, like, oh, her first marathon. I think a lot of people in the general public took that as, oh, she's literally never run before. Like the stewardesses on the airline or on the flight back from Atlanta were like, so like, did you just start running like a couple weeks ago? I was like, no, I've been doing this for the best
Did you
part
get
of
lost in Atlanta and lose your car keys? Like,
well, that's the joke amongst my because I worked part-time as a barista back in Boston, but I'm a full-time pro runner. It's like plucky barista takes a 2-hour coffee break and wins mare, like makes the Olympic team. And so it's like, yeah, that's like the fun, like clickbait headline, but that's not really the story.
Yeah. So I wanted to, that's funny. It is a good headline though. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you say? So one of the things that struck me about your race itself was you mentioned in an interview afterwards how someone was commenting, I think from like letsrun.com, like these were your mile splits at the end, and you were like, oh, I don't even know what I was running. I don't look at my watch. I didn't look at my watch when I raced. And I was just curious, is like, have you just never looked at your watch, or was it in the marathon? Did you like only look at it every once in a while? And I like to frame this in the concept with like a lot of newer to intermediate runners, when they start running with a GPS watch, they almost become a slave to it and they're just staring at it all the time. So what was it like your first marathon, really competitive field, really challenging course? You've all these things coming in and you feel like, oh, this could be something that helps me or hurts me.
Yeah. I go both ways with GPS watch. I think it is a great tool, especially like when I'm doing a workout alone and I need to know my pace, or I'm doing a tempo. It is so helpful for knowing what you need to be hitting, or in a race where I might be alone, I don't have competitors around me. It's really a useful tool, but that's what it is. It's a tool. It's not the be all end all. So in the Olympic trials, it doesn't matter at the end of the day whether you hit all your splits perfectly and we're exactly on marathon pace. If the rest of the field is going, you need to go with them, regardless of what your watch is telling you. And I think that's what gets lost in translation with a lot of runners is they're like, oh, but my watch is telling me to go this pace. It's like, yeah, but your competitors are going. Like, that's the race. Don't lose it. So in that race, that was 100% true. I actually did not look at my watch once the entire race. I saw like the race clocks that they had up, but truthfully, I wasn't really paying attention to the pace, partially because I didn't want to freak myself out with it being my first one. I just wanted to focus on how I was feeling and not be like, oh man, we're running really fast, I'm worried, and not focus on, oh man, we still have 10 miles to go and I'm already tired. I was just trying to be in it and like, okay, just take what this race is throwing at you and hold on as long as you can. When you can't hang on anymore, that's it. And I just got to mile 19 and all of a sudden I found myself up at the front. It was like, oh, now we're racing.
And do you feel like if you had looked at your watch, or if you look at your watch during those times where you're really focusing on racing, that you would kind of fall victim to that, like, oh no, this pace is faster than what I would have anticipated that I would have been going. And maybe like you take that into your body or something and that kind of like psychs you out. Does that?
Yeah, I think in a way it's just like, it's extra information that I didn't need. And because I felt like with how that race was going, I was just very like in it. I was almost just like in this flow state where I was like, knew what was happening and just felt really engaged. And I didn't care what pace we were going because I was just running with this pack. And that's the only thing that mattered, is staying with that front pack. And then once Alfine and I started to go, it's like, it doesn't matter what pace we're going anymore. We just got to make sure that we're putting a gap between us and the women behind us. And so there are races where I do use my watch and have to stay at a certain pace. But I think on that day, that was like, when it's championship style racing, you just need to be in it, fully absorbed, and any information that is going to negatively affect your mindset, just don't even look at it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. We have so many questions we want to ask you about just different aspects of your running and training and career. We want one or two more just on this Olympic moment because it's so great. You know, in a marathon, it's almost like it's too long for nothing to go wrong, whether it's some major blow up or you just go through a little low spot and you have like a stomach cramp. Like, did you have any low spots in this race, and how'd you get through them?
I don't know. This is going to be super embarrassing, but I did have to go to the bathroom really bad in that race. And yeah, I don't know if that's too graphic to talk about on here.
You're in good company.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. Like, this is, definitely one of the unglamorous parts of like running. But yeah, I did have to wet my pants while I was like going and running. So immediately after that race, changed out of my uniform. But yeah, that was definitely a worry of like, do I stop? Do I like stop and use one of the porta potties? And I think it came to a point where I was like, you know what, just gonna have to deal with this. And luckily they like, yeah, I'm sorry, that is so unglamorous.
Hey, you know what?
Job. Like, it's hard to do. I'm impressed.
Totally. And
I'm very worried about going into it. I did bonk a little bit at the end. I found out afterwards that I was not taking in enough carbohydrates. So like the last 4 miles were not super fun. But luckily I had taken in enough carbs that I wasn't like totally like on the ground bonked. But yeah, I did not feel great after that race.
That's funny. Well, for those triathletes in the mix, you know, some of us are used to peeing on our bikes in long races, and should ask Brian about that, your chiropractor, because he's funny thing we used to talk about, or we used to train together a whole lot, which we'll save for another conversation on another day. But we wanted to ask one more. Ashley, do you want to ask that other question on the Olympics?
Yeah, well, you know, this isn't necessarily about the Olympic race, the trials that you just had, but man, after such a huge event for you, and this like big build up to this event that is not happening this year now, I imagine you went from this like really, really incredible high to like, oh my gosh, to what's next? Like, what have you had to adjust since that day, and like, what are you doing?
It's mixed feelings about it, because like obviously postponing was the right call. Like obviously there was no way that it was going to be able to happen safely this summer. And so it's knowing like, okay, it is postponed, not canceled. It's going to be able to be safer and healthier next year, but just sadness, obviously. Like I was really looking forward to racing in Sapporo, to going over to Tokyo, and yeah, it's just deferring it for a year. On the flip side, it does give me a unique opportunity with the fact that I am such a young marathoner, because I've only done one, to try and get in another one in the fall if there are marathons in the fall. Yeah. So we're trying to use this time, because my training has been so broken up over the last couple of years, dealing with injury and surgery. I just haven't had long periods of uninterrupted training. I think I had 5 months of like consistent training before the trial. So now like, okay, we need to focus on just getting in consistency more than anything. Hopefully getting some more experience, working out some of these kinks, fueling correctly. So yeah, there's a lot of things for me to practice over this next year.
Yeah. So is there a race that you all have kind of on the calendar that's a maybe?
Right now everything's so up in the air. If racing starts again in late summer and the fall, we'll jump in maybe some shorter distance races, 5Ks, 10Ks, try and find a half. But then try and either do like, if the American majors happen, try and either do Chicago or New York.
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool. Okay, so I want to go back a little bit to before all of this, to earlier in your running life. You were approached about a sponsorship when you were younger, and you turned it down because you were dealing with a lot of eating disorder situation, like a lot of things going on in your life. And turning down a sponsorship is like a pretty big deal. I think that takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of takes a lot of compassion for yourself as a person over your sport. Like, how did you do that, and how did you know then that it was the right thing to do?
Part of it is when I was approached for sponsorships after my senior year, after I'd won the AA championships, but knowing how unhealthy of a place I was in physically and mentally, I didn't feel right going and like agreeing to run for a company and then telling them, okay, I now have to go into eating disorder treatment for the foreseeable future and get through these injuries and whatnot. And then I realized I just needed the time to kind of work on myself and make sure that I was physically and healthy, or like physically and mentally healthy enough, so that when I was ready to go pro, that I was doing it on my terms. And I truly do believe that if I had gone pro that first year rather than turning down those contracts, I wouldn't be still running, because I couldn't continue in the way that I was going. So even though I turned the contracts down that year and went pro the following year, and therefore, like, obviously it was, I almost didn't get a contract then the next year, but I felt like when I did, it was on my terms, and I felt like I was running for the right reasons.
Did you take a break from competition when you also stepped away from a contract? Was it a time where you just like stepped away from running, or ran more at like normal mortal levels as opposed to, you know, elite runner levels?
Well, so when I originally, I had broken my sacrum, so I straight up wasn't running for a while. And then going through treatment, you're not allowed to train. But yeah, my therapist would let me do small amounts of running, but the main focus was recovery. And so I put all of the like determination and drive that I usually put into my training into my recovery. So then when on the other side of it, several months later, I was able to like finally train again. But yeah, there were long periods of on and off because I was dealing with reduced intensity after that, and just like consistent injuries, and mentally it just takes time to get back into it. So yeah, it's not a quick process, but in the end, it's like, it's always worth it getting that kind of help.
Yeah. Ashley, this is why we have two hosts, by the way.
Oh my gosh, Mom, this has never happened before. My cat and my dog UPS just got here, and so
I thought they were just like into the conversation. They just wanted to participate, you know.
Yeah, they really wanted to. They did. That's true. Molly, you said something after the Olympic trials that really resonated with a lot of people, and a lot of people that I know. You said that you didn't want a young girl to see a picture of you when you were sick, and to think that's what I need to look like to run fast. And that's just, I mean, I think that's an issue that so many young women deal with, and they think, oh yeah, if I lose weight, I'm going to be faster, and then that just becomes this vicious cycle, and it just like is rampant in this sport. So like what do you think we should do about it, I guess? And like, what do you want people, those young girls, to look at you and think now? Or like, how do you, yeah, that's a complicated question, but.
Yeah, it's hard because there are so many of these images in the sport and coaches that preach that still. And just, yeah, it's in so many ways, it is just this negative imagery for girls coming up through the sport who think to be at an elite level, I need to be as lean as possible. I need to be thin. Lighter is faster. And that is just so false, because healthy is faster. You're going fastest at a weight that is healthy for you. Like I ran really fast when I was only 100 pounds, but I broke my back a week later, and I then couldn't run for 6 months. So if you can't sustainably train and stay healthy, you're never going to be able to string together the training that requires you, or that's required for you to run at your best. So now, like, I see those photos of myself in college when I was so thin, so unhealthy, and the times that I was running and the training that I was doing. And then I look at myself now, and I'm 15 pounds heavier than I was, but I can just do so many more things because I'm finally in a place where I have energy and I'm healthy and my body can handle consistent training. So I I would say to those women who believe like, oh, I have to be as skinny as possible to run fast. It's like, no, to be fast, you have to be able to consistently and healthily train. And if you're happy and healthy, you'll run fast then.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's such a powerful message. And it's also like, you don't necessarily you're not like, oh, this is this thing that is in my past, I'm over it, move on to the next segment. It's like an eating disorder is always there. Like it's something that's going to be a part of your life if you've experienced it no matter what. So how, like, it's not a thing to solve, I guess. So how today do you feel like what is the thing that you face every day still that you're like, okay, I know this is my, this is the thing I'm going to focus on, and I'm gonna take this step and this step, or like both the thing that you still battle and the thing that you have noticed incredible improvement on, that's like you think about and you just feel really like happy and proud.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly like you said. I think a lot of people view eating disorders as like, okay, you deal with this and then you get treatment and you're fixed and you never deal with it again. I think that really sells it short of just how difficult and insidious these disorders are, because it's never something that you fully recover from. It's something that you learn to manage and you learn to live with, but you're always going to keep facing it. And yes, that can sound negative, but in a way it's powerful, because it's like, okay, I shouldn't feel ashamed that I still have these thoughts, that I still feel these things, but I know that I can change my attitude and my behavior so that it's not taking over my life. So certain things that I still deal with, especially now with the marathon, where you just physically have to eat so much to volume that you're running, it's something that I really struggled with, because I was coming from a background where just 3 years ago, I was restricting so much and I wouldn't let my certain foods. And I couldn't just enjoy food for the sake of it being food, and it's social, and it's not just like scientific nutrients in your body. There's other components. And so now I feel like I've reached the point where I can enjoy food as more than just calories or carbohydrates or like protein for my body. I can see it as, this is something that I share with friends. This is something that, like, as cheesy as this sound, like nourishes my soul in a way. Like I love donuts. It's just something that I love because it is just nutritionally the most worthless food, but they fill me up in a way of just like, they make me so happy. Like there's nothing I enjoy more than just like finishing a long run and eating donuts with my friends, because donuts just make people happy. And it's able to just say, screw it, I'm just like having a donut. I don't care that this isn't like endurance fuel or whatnot. It's something that brings me joy that I can enjoy with friends. And that's what, at the end of the day, it's like, if something doesn't like fuel you either physically or emotionally, it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's such a important point to make, that like, yeah, okay, on a practical surface, like what does a donut offer? But on like an emotional level of like, oh, the donut represents this thing, and like that makes it nourishing in some sort of different way.
Yeah.
Or like the fact that like you don't have to be perfect 100% of the time. Like I think a lot of people get caught up in that, especially before the trials. I would see so many people like, oh, now I have to like nail down my nutrition. I have to 100% of the time. And like I was drinking beers every couple days before the trials. I would have sweets, I would have donuts, but in moderation. Like if I'm fueling my body at least 80% of the time, eating vegetables, eating proteins, eating fats, eating all these things, then 20% of the time you don't have to be perfect. Like good enough is good enough.
That's interesting, because if you could have the most scientifically designed nutritional plan, but if it does put you in that bad headspace, it's like, you know, maybe a half step forward, but then we've taken some steps back. Like how do you balance that?
I've lived that before. I've lived that life of everything had to be perfectly curated and everything had to be tracked, and I could only be eating the things that were physically going to make me the best runner I could be. It almost killed me. And so now like it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Um is there like a thing now that you still feel like is like a piece of that every day you're like, okay, I know this is something I'm still working on, or like a little voice that you have to, I know there's like a voice always that you'll have to
Yeah,
battle.
there's always the voice and you're always battling it. Yeah, that voice in your head, like you're not skinny enough. If you're not skinny enough, you're not going to be fast enough. And it's just sometimes telling it to shut up. And yeah, just shut up and do what you need to do. And yeah, just trying to like be a little bit more mindful of the situations that make that voice act up a little bit more. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, it's always going to be there, but it's just not letting that be the only thing in my head anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a few quick comments from our YouTube live chat. Lizzie runs far, says, love this. Amit says, love the candor and openness, Molly. Sam and Debbie say, great advice. Vivian says, love your honesty and maturity, Molly. Running with Pete says, she's a strong woman and speaks volumes. So you got some fans, Molly. You got some fans over here. We wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the other half of the difficulties you've dealt with in the past, which was around injuries. And I know that getting into this last marathon cycle, it seemed to be, well, we'd like to hear a little bit more about like what the marathon training was like, but one would think is like, man, if I've battled injuries in the past, if I've got 4 or 5 months of like rigorous marathon training, that is like open season for more injuries to come in. Like, did you deal with injuries in the process, or how did you take previous experience and be more successful or consistent with your training into the trials?
So actually the reason that we switched to the marathon, because I was primarily a 5K, 10K runner. And the plan was originally to gear up more for the 10K trials on the track. So that was going to be my quote unquote main event. And I after my most recent major injury last summer, I was on crutches for a few weeks, couldn't run, and realized like this just wasn't working anymore. What I was doing wasn't working. The kind of training I was doing wasn't working. So I ended up leaving my coach, leaving the training group that I was with, and my friend John Green started coaching me, and we just kind of decided like, hey, like the track work that I need to do to be a 10K runner, it just keeps getting me hurt over and over and over. I feel like hitting my head against the wall. And so why don't we try marathon training? Because my body responds better to mileage and moderate workouts than it does to shorter mileage and track intervals. So we started this whole marathon experiment as a way to gear up for the 10K, not to qualify for the Olympic marathon team. It just came about that I was stronger. Suddenly I was able to string a month together without getting hurt. Then it was 2 months. Then all of a sudden John is like, hey, like this would be pretty cool if you hopped in a half marathon and maybe try the Houston Marathon if you're feeling good. Qualified for the marathon trials at the San Antonio half, and Houston let me switch to the half. And yeah, every step of the way, it was kind of just like, okay, I'm healthier than I expected it to be. Let's move on to the next thing. So it was less of like, how do I put together 5 months of training to get ready for the trials? It was, oh, like, wow, I'm healthier than I expected to be doing this marathon training. I expected to get hurt, but I haven't. What's the next thing we can build up to? So it's just kind of weird. I think so much of it was just figuring out the kind of training that worked for my body. And though it seems counterintuitive, for me specifically, running 100 miles a week and moderate workouts makes me healthier than running 50 miles a week and intense workouts.
Interesting.
Yeah, the one thing that just stands out so much about you, Molly, is just like you have been through so much in your running career, and your resiliency, like you have this stubborn resiliency that just seems
stubborn
secret weapon. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no, if anything, I don't know. My college coach who put it Izue, he's like, you're too stubborn to quit this. Like, it's definitely, and like, not to lie, there have been low points. I have considered quitting the sport at times. Like, there are times, especially like when I had to go 6 months of no running after surgery, like I'm not gonna lie, that was really hard. And there were points that I considered not doing this anymore just because it hurts and it's hard coming back from those kinds of injuries. But I think at the end of the day, I'm like too dumb to do anything else. But just like at the core of it is like I just love running for running's sake. Like I love racing. Racing is very fun and glamorous,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, like I just love going out and like grinding every day. So it's like, sorry about that if that just cut out. But yeah, I just love like the boring going out and just working hard day after day. Like that's what I strive for. And like the racing is the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so good. So I wanted to do, actually, do you have any follow-up there?
Well, I just like the daily grinds, like that, the love for that piece of it. Like, I wanted you to describe that a little bit more. Like, what is it about that you love so much? Because running is such a unique sport, and like, it's just like this repetitive thing over and over that we do. And yeah, what is it about that?
I don't know. It's like, I guess it's the idea that like I've heard people say like, oh, how can you do this? It's so painful. It's so hard. It's so boring.
Hmm.
And I guess it's just this idea of like, but I get to choose my own misery in a way. Like to me, like sitting in an office and having to work like a corporate job or something, which is what I could have done. Like I could have quit and gone and worked a corporate job or something. And to me, that's just another kind of misery or whatnot. And it's like, I love just like I love getting to choose a way that is just like, yeah, sometimes it's hard and sometimes.
Oh, did we lose Molly for a second?
Yeah,
like,
she froze for a minute.
Workout, and it's just, yeah, it's fun. It's fun getting to do that, as like crazy as that sounds, and looking back on what you've done and being like, dang, like I just ran like 105 miles last week, and yeah, my body hates me right now, but like it's something so tangible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard, but our lives are so easy in a way that it's like this is the one truly hard thing I get to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I that's a very interesting thing. Like we've engineered so much inconvenience out of our lives that we now have to bring it back in some way and kind of remind ourselves of, what it means to be a human, not to go too deep or crazy.
Or even in the sense of like getting to run with people, getting to have a community around it and like share in this. It's just like, I don't know, every part of it is like, I don't know. If you can't tell, I'm a pretty big running nerd. So it's like, I love every part of the process of it.
Speaking of Saucony, how did you end up choosing to work with them?
Yeah, so I've been running in Saucony since high school. I got my first pair of Kinvaras my senior year of high school. They're big, like huge presence in the Midwest. So I was just like, man, like my first pair of spikes were Saucony, ran in Sauconys in high school. So just like loved the shoes. And then when I was going pro, they were, after when they offered me my first year, I turned them down so that I could kind of get my health in order. And then the next year, no other companies wanted me. The only company was Saucony. And they're like, you know what? We realize you've been through a lot. We realize you're injured right now. This might never pan out, but we believe that you could be something great. And so we're willing to invest in you right now. And so even though I was very upfront with them, I'm like, hey, like I'm super injured right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to race for the next couple months. They're like, don't care. Let's bring you on. We know you're a developmental athlete, but we're willing to invest in that. And it just so happened that I got healthier a lot quicker than I expected to. And then like that fall, like raced great. And so it was really fun to get to like share that with them after they basically took a huge chance on me coming out of school. And so like, it's really fun to get to share that with them now as well, like making the trials. Cause it's like, I've gotten to be a part of the development of like many of the pairs of shoes or like the shoes that I was racing in. And I've gotten to be around the office. I know the people who work at the company, and it's just like, it's really fun getting to share that with them because they were there for me from the very beginning.
Is that why you moved to Boston?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I have them to thank for the fact that I'm now like Bostonian.
Is that when your love of donuts started too?
What?
Is that when your love of donuts started too? That's a Boston thing, right? No,
back.
that goes way back. Well, it's fitting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've helped to develop shoes with Saucony. So one of those, the shoes that you wore in the Olympic trials, the Endorphin Pro. Can you tell us a little bit about that shoe and testing it and racing in it?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I guess it would have been about a year and a half or 2 years ago at this point. Some of the shoe developers at Saucony came to us and said, like, hey, we're thinking about developing this carbon plated shoe. We know that's like all the rage now with the Nike Next Percent, and everybody's trying to get this. We want to make one so you guys can race in this, so you can be like in the best position possible and never go into a race feeling like you're at a disadvantage because of your shoes. So there's multiple iterations of the Endorphins. They started out kind of like blue with different uppers, different bottoms, different foams. And I legitimately have about 10 different pairs of every like life stage. It's kind of like the Darwinian evolution photo, seeing them go through and gradually like narrow down a little bit, kind of become more sophisticated. And yeah, when we got the final development pair, we're like, this is it. Like, this is going to be the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
And so the day before the trials, I got my like full pair. I traded out my prototypes for the real deal ones, and I put them on. I was like, these are a really good pair of shoes. And so it's been really fun to get not only to wear this awesome pair of shoes, but to get to be part of that development process of trying them out and seeing what works, what doesn't work, and being in communication with the developers, because it's like, that's the kind of stuff that they use and are super responsive to when it's like, hey, this upper just doesn't feel quite right. And they immediately fix it, send it to pair, and like, hey, how does this feel? How can we make this the best shoe possible? So it's like, yeah. So once I got on the line at the trials, it was like, this is the best shoe I could be in right now.
Yeah, and that's so awesome because it's like you would put on that new pair just the day before. And that's something another Saucony athlete actually told us on Fleet Feet's Instagram channel earlier this week. We talked with triathlete Lindsay Corbin, and she said a similar thing about the Endorphin Pro. Like, she put it on only for a race, and she was like, man, this shoe is perfect. And just another quick note about the Endorphin Pro. They go on sale June 1st at select Fleet Feet stores around the country, so you can find a pair there. And you can also go to fleetfeet.com and shop for all Saucony products. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, rapid fire questions?
Yeah, I'm excited for some rapid fire questions here. These are always cool. So these are all questions from our Instagram, as well as we'll try to grab some from our YouTube comments here. Best training shoes for a cross-country runner?
Oh, for a cross-country runner, probably is this like a high school cross-country runner?
I am guessing.
I would say Freedom 3s, or if you want something lighter, a Kinvara, something heavier, Ride 3. Or not heavier, more stable.
Cool. When did you start running?
When I was 12.
Nice. She's answering them rapidly.
Yeah, I know. We gotta get faster, Nate. We have to rapid fire ask.
I figured they need to be fast. I don't want to do like minute and a half answers on these.
You're crushing this. We gotta step up our game, Nate. Here we go.
Oh my God. Sorry, guys. It's been a week. At what moment did you realize you had a genuine solid chance of making the podium for the Olympic trials?
I actually, we ran under the Olympic rings. This is about 2 miles to go, and you flip like 180 degrees. So you see everybody coming at you then, and we didn't realize how far ahead we were. And so I realized we had a gap, and I saw Desi Linden, and she looked right at us and gave me a thumbs up. And I was like, yep, you're doing this.
So cool.
That's really
so
cool.
What inspired you to start running in the first place when you were 12 years old?
I just liked running. I don't think there's any deep philosophical thing. I was just like, this is fun. I'm pretty good at it.
Did you do any other sports when you were younger?
Yes, running was the last sport I tried. I ski raced first. I've been doing that since I was like 6 years old. Played field hockey. I sailed. I played soccer. Yeah, bunch of different stuff. Nordic cross country skied. Yeah, a lot of different things. Running kind of came out of nowhere.
Where is your favorite run in Boston?
Charles River, hands down.
It's a good spot.
Coming over the bridge in the morning as the sun's coming up over the city, like I still get chills on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. Do you have any favorite strength training workouts?
Ooh. Right now, because gyms are closed, I've just been doing tons of planks, and they're awful. They never get easier.
Mm.
There we go.
What's your favorite rest day activity?
Favorite rest day activity? Actually, when it's winter, I love cross-country skiing, just super easy.
Mm-hmm.
Or downhill skiing. Actually, any kind of skiing on rest days.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Let's get one from the YouTube comments from William. Best advice for managing muscle soreness during higher mileage training?
Epsom salt baths are wonderful. That's something that I've been doing a lot. I have a Normatec, so I do use that quite a bit. But like, truthfully, there's nothing better than like soaking in a hot tub with Epsom salts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your favorite music?
Ooh.
Oh, I have very eclectic taste in music. I float between indie rock and like golden age hip hop.
What
Nice.
is your golden age of hip hop?
Golden age hip hop, I would say, so like NWA through like Black Star, Mos Def.
That's funny.
So anything in that period, and I'm 100% East Coast hip hop, not
Ooh.
West Coast, despite my love of NWA.
Oh my God, that's so funny. What's the Netflix show? It's Hip Hop Evolution. Have you watched it?
I love that one. It's
so
excellent.
good.
Like, I was like very into old school hip hop growing up. I would be able to find the CDs. And so when I saw that come on Netflix, I was like, oh my God, like this is just like, I feel like a soundtrack that I grew up with.
That's awesome. Yeah, hip hop and music nerds out there, check that out on Netflix. It's a super fun thing to go. Speaking of Netflix, what are you watching right now? What's your favorite thing?
I have been binging Peaky Blinders. It is wonderful. Also so violent. Oh my God.
Okay, you like to wear costumes. A turkey costume, I think, is the one I've seen. Why do you like to race in costumes? For fun races, not the Olympic trial.
I don't know. It's just kind of fun. I think people take racing too seriously in general. And I just love actually, no, it's really fun to beat people when you're wearing a costume because
the truth.
Really mad.
So it does seem, okay, this is not really a rapid fire question, but it seems like you're really good at not taking yourself too seriously all the time. That it seems like you have this really nice balance with that. And especially I don't know what you're doing now, but before this you were still working as a barista. You were also babysitting. You were doing a lot of different things, which Nate and I were just wondering if you're doing any of that during the pandemic right now. But you have this really interesting balance in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to have the balance because there have been points in my life where I took running way too seriously and it sucked all the joy out of it. And I think appreciating running for what it is, and it is this very special thing, and it is 90% of my life as my job, but at the same time keeping that joy in there and the love of the sport in general, and not I don't know, holding on to it loosely and treating it for objectively. When I tell people that I'm a professional runner and that my job is to run in circles moderately fast for a living, that sounds like a joke. My lifestyle is kind of a joke. So it's I don't know, this is all kind of ridiculous and it's all kind of fun. I get to live my dream doing it and don't take it too seriously. Nobody else does.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah, that's a good balance. But you as someone who doesn't take things or takes things the appropriately balanced level of seriousness, not to say that you don't take it seriously at all, it just makes it seem easy. You're oh yeah, it's not a problem. But so many athletes and even amateur athletes really struggle with this, outside expectations, oh my God, I'm gonna post this run on Strava and everyone's gonna know how slow I ran, but I need this paragraph explanation.
Okay, I truthfully think that amateur runners take running a lot more seriously than professionals, because it's like, I don't know, at the end of the day, like, we know that, like, this is a fun, short, finite time in our lives. And so it's like, yeah, I don't get to do this forever. And it's like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't enjoy it. So it's like, I don't know, running at the end of the day should be fun. If it's stressing you out, like, that's not what running's about.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
That's true.
So I wanted to get into a little bit more around, you talked a little bit about planks and strength training. You know, that's been my background. I battled a lot of injuries when I was younger as well, and really forced an exploration into different types of strength training. And I was just curious, you know, what you have done in the past versus what you're doing now. Of course, you mentioned the gyms are closed, so you're just doing a bunch of planks, but, you know, when you had access to a gym, you know, what did that look like in your training?
Yeah, so I guess my strength training is slightly informal, in the sense that I don't necessarily have like a fully written out plan or like a progression. I did in college. Now I just straight up don't have a strength coach, so that's part of it. But I generally know what I need to do. I do a lot of like Olympic lifts, so like heavy like squat. I think heavy squats are important. Like a lot of just like glute and core strength, I think, is very important for a lot of runners. But I try not to, I guess, like, yeah, I do strength training to the degree that it's going to help like keep me strong and not injured, but not like, oh yeah, I need to like bench 500 pounds or something. Like, I think, or just do like PT exercises for hours every day. Like, I think there is kind of like a point of diminishing returns.
Sure.
And also
something
just
in
the sense
between.
of, like, yeah, and staying just all around strong. Like, there are times where I won't go and strength train, but I'll go rock climbing instead. And so like, just like general mobility and fitness, I think, is important.
Yeah, you mentioned something about heavy squats, which I love. A little person inside me lit up. You know, I think with a lot of runners, there's either a danger of like, if I do that, A, I'll get hurt, or B, it will bulk me up and make me a slower runner. Like, what do you have to say about that?
I mean, unless you're pounding like massive protein drinks after your workouts and like not running at all, I don't think most runners are going to be in danger of bulking up, truthfully. Like, I feel like you have to like be pretty like focused on bulking if that's like what's going to happen. But I think like heavy lifts, I feel like, are the most bang for your buck in terms of lifting. Like, yeah, you can do body weight squats, but that's not going to build that bone density. That's not going to build that explosive strength. So like, doing 5 heavy squats is going to do a lot more for you than 20 body weight squats. And so I think having all of these systems is important. But at the end of the day, form is the most important thing. Doing 5 heavyweight squats is pointless if you're doing it with horrible form.
Yeah. So moving away from strength and weights, what was your favorite workout leading up to the Trials Marathon?
So my favorite one that we did, we actually didn't do any like massive workouts. The most I topped out around marathon pace was about 12 miles. And I just had straight up never run over 24 before the day of the marathon. But my favorite workout that we did were called float and push miles, or float and push kilometers, where the goal is to average out to my goal marathon pace, but we'll do 1 mile at 5 to 10 seconds slower than marathon pace, and then shift to 5 to 10 seconds faster than marathon pace. Because in a marathon, you're hardly ever running one consistent pace for a long period of time. And especially in Atlanta with the hills, it's constantly shifting around. So getting used to those changes in paces so that overall it equals out to what your goal marathon pace is, but you're hitting different speeds throughout is important. So I would do like, 10 to 12 miles of that kind of workout was like my key workout leading into the trials.
Since you worked, I don't know if you're still working at a coffee shop, but what is your favorite drink that you make as a barista?
I make a really good cortado. Cortados and cafe au laits are my go-to.
Cool.
Have you mastered the foam art that you can make like little
No,
runners in it?
no, I'm so bad. I'm so bad at latte art. It's pathetic. I'm not artistic, so that's the main. That's why I run.
How do you deal with nerves before and during races?
I do a lot of crossword puzzles.
Oh, nice.
Sorry, should probably think deep breathing, I guess. Yeah, mindfulness, but yeah, crossword puzzles are really good for not thinking about the race.
Yeah. What do you eat during a marathon? I mean, what did you eat during your marathon?
So I use Morton. Drink 160 in bottles and then take gels as well. And at mile 18, I did a caffeinated gel, which felt great.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice. That's cool. Let me see here. We got our coffee thing.
Post-workout fuel.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I jumped in there. Your favorite post-workout fuel?
Ooh, I've actually been really bad. I will like pound a cold brew coffee that I have mixed like collagen into, and then an RX bar or a picky bar.
Nice. Yeah.
This is interesting from the YouTube comments from Bill. It says, what's your mental go-to on the days when you're just not feeling it? Mental go-to being open for interpretation.
Yeah, on days where it's hard for me to mentally get into a workout, things aren't clicking, my body doesn't feel like really good. If I'm feeling really bad, like body is just worn down, I'm actually like never opposed to like cutting a workout and moving it to another day if my body truly doesn't feel good. If it's more a matter of like, okay, I need to just push through this and mentally gear up for it, I always think to myself, even if I'm not hitting the paces that I want to hit, the most important thing is for me to do this and get through it, because you're practicing that mental toughness. Like that helps like late in a race where you're just hurting and your brain doesn't want to do it anymore. And it's like, I've done this before. I've gotten through hard workouts when my brain wasn't in it. So it's practicing those mental tricks when you're not feeling it in a workout that's going to help someday in a race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, this is going to be a little bit of a more serious question, but going back to some of the stuff that we talked about earlier with eating disorders and kind of that whole journey, and just looking at young runners and other women in the sport, like, what is your one, like, is there, if you could just look at someone and shake them out of it, like, what would you shake them and say?
I don't know. There's a lot of things. I see a lot of women go through it, and it's hard because it's hard when you're deep in it. And like, I know this from experience, until you hit rock bottom and like make that realization for yourself, you're not going to change. And so it's like, someone has to come to that realization themselves, and they have to want to change to make their lives better. It can't be because of their friends are telling. Like, obviously it helps, like having your friends, having your family, having your coach tell you these things, but you have to believe it, and you have to realize that like things need to change. So at the end of the day, it's all up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And another one, how does it feel to be an Olympian?
Feels awesome. I still kind of like, I don't know, I'll see it like written places like Molly Seidel Olympian. I'm like, damn, like this feels cool.